Let's make history. Carroll Gardens was named after Charles Carroll during the American Revolutionary War and defended the area. Coincidentally, he was the only Catholic signer of the Declaration of Independence. In the early 1800s, the area was settled by the Irish. It was at first originally considered part of quote-unquote South Brooklyn, and people sometimes wonder why South Brooklyn is called such when it isn't in the southern part of Brooklyn. And that's because if you've been following my page, my channel, check out my other videos on this related topic. And originally Brooklyn, just briefly, Brooklyn was originally 6 towns. One of those towns was the town of Brooklyn. This one, it wasn't called Brooklyn, it was called Kings County. So the town of Brooklyn was over right there on the western edge of Brooklyn, where the current neighborhoods of Carroll Gardens, Red Hook, downtown Brooklyn, Dumbo, and Brooklyn Heights stand today. It didn't really have its own identity all the way to the mid-1900s. 2 philanthropists started to develop the area because there was Greenwood Cemetery and they wanted to make easier access to the cemetery. So they stepped up transportation to the area of Carroll Gardens, which also led to the ferry, which would give people greater accessibility to Manhattan, where everything was really going on at as far as business. They built these brownstones, and what's different about the brownstones that were built in Carroll Gardens was that they are pushed back further from the curb than anywhere else in Brooklyn, and that was to facilitate the building of lawn gardens. So the lawns were like mini gardens. Also how Carroll Gardens got the gardens part of its name because of this, and the city actually made an ordinance demanding that residents who live in Carroll Gardens houses pushed back a certain length from the curb to maintain that feature of the neighborhood. Early 1900s, dock workers were in high demand, so Italians started flooding in the area to fill those roles, mostly in Red Hook and also in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. As the Italians moved in, the Irish started to move out. There was also some skirmishes. They had like they definitely had some rivalries. You know, you got to remember, Carroll Gardens wasn't even its original, didn't have its complete individual identity yet. The cutoff was Hamilton Ave. And then later when Robert Moses had the Gowanus Brooklyn Queens Expressway built, that became an official boundary. Right before the Irish moved out, they would live primarily on the northern end, and Italians lived on the southern end. The Irish in the north part of the neighborhood would call themselves Creekies, after the Gowanus Creek, or the Creekers, and then the Italians along the south portion of the neighborhood would call themselves Hookers, actually, or Hookies, because of its proximity to Red Hook. So they had their gang wars. Eventually the Irish moved out, and it became an Italian enclave. After that, it got a heavy reputation as being mafioso. During the latter part of the 20th century, it began to be gentrified. And the Italians who originally had settled there, you know, earlier on, were like pissed off about this. You know, calling them like, you know, young yuppies that had no connection to the community. Once these neighborhoods are gentrified and people move into these neighborhoods, many times they don't show any respect or honor for the pre-existing culture.